Hello and welcome to PubShorts episode 139. Would you believe it? Divide and conquer is what we are going to call it. My name is Dr. KK. I call myself Dr. KK, and I think Tony calls himself Tony O'Rourke for some reason. Hi, Tony.
Good. Well, glad you have a name for yourself. Ignore the other people. Hello, everyone. I'm Tony O'Rourke. Everyone calls me Tony O'Rourke, including myself. And welcome to PubShorts. This is episode 139.
Mhm.
And as regular viewers know, we like to name episodes after songs, mostly British songs. And this episode is named after a song by the wonderful, wonderful British rock group Idols, who actually come from my hometown of Bristol, or most of them do, not all of them.
Yeah.
It's from, I think, 2018. The song is a wonderful song, a confrontational take on power and manipulation. Fit the weak about systemic misconduct, replication failures, editorial self-dealing, and how structural incentives quietly encourage bad behavior in global research.
Excellent summarization and
Great choice of song.
Excellent choice of why the song connects with the episode, the stories of the episode, Tony. Once again, thank you.
By the way, have you moved to Hawaii for some reason? You're wearing the most Hawaiian shirt I've ever seen.
Yes, but I have not moved. This is on my evening shirts, and I thought I'd wear it. It's not evening, so I decided to make it into.
It's evening somewhere.
It is indeed, but it's not evening where I live. But again, let's get on with the stories. And the first story that we are talking about is about research integrity by Adam Day, the mighty Adam Day. It's titled "Oversight: Understanding Risk and Strategic Integrity." So it discusses the difference between data and truth, using the analogy that data is information but models represent the truth. And Adam uses a graph of journal publications to illustrate how analyzing data, publication numbers, can reveal trends of growth. So this is publications per month for a particular journal up to mid 2024. Wait, hold on. Oh, come on. Yeah. And this is another graph which shows you how things are evolving. So the fraudulent research publications, and that's the thing that we are concerned about, and the topic of the article, are data points, but the truth that they reveal is a pattern of behavior indicative of risk, which can lead to significant costs. So Adam explains that journal cancellations, often due to research fraud, represent a reputational collapse and cost millions, contrasting this with the cost of individual retractions, which is in the thousands. So Adam also talks about oversight, is not in a non-promotional way, from Clear Skies, which is presented as a solution to help avoid retractions and predict and prevent cancellations by providing oversight of potential risks. So anyway, so the main point that I'm trying to make, Tony, is that this trend involves a lot of research misconduct and paper mill publications and everything, and this can cost publishers a lot, and that is the thing. And so that's the reason why screening tools are very important in the context of academic publishing in 2026. What are your thoughts?
I think you're understating it by saying it's very important. It's absolutely critical that publishers have rigorous, reliable tools in place, such as Aaron Argo reports. For example, I'm not going to advertise it. That can verify the integrity of the content. It's absolutely critical, mission critical. I mean, any publisher that's not doing that is almost failing, I think, in their processes at the moment.
Right. So moving on to the next one, it is related to research misconduct. Replication crisis is the story, as in topic of the story. It's an open science article in Nature Reviews Psychology, systemic forces in the replication crisis. So the writer of the article entered the field, the realm of psychological science, in around 2015, and the replication crisis was a climate that they learned to work in, and not a sudden shock. So the author recalls reading the 2015 Open Science Collaboration paper. It felt like a sobering validation, the author says. It is described as a masterpiece of meta-science. Meta-science is basically the science about the things that have been published. Yeah. So in terms of research misconduct, so it was for the lack of a better word, seminal paper. It systematically audited the field of psychology. The study replicated about 100 psychological studies, and this was done by a large consortium of about 270 authors. Original studies had a high replication rate, and this actually, I stumbled at this, with 97% having significant results. However, the high-powered replications, in the sense, the replications of these original studies had a much lower rate of replication, which took a little bit for me to sort of understand what that was, and it's only 38% significant. The average effect size in the replication studies was less than half of the original study. So there is obviously something that is going wrong, despite the fact that we are aware of the replication crisis, and studies trying to replicate are, not high standard studies. So what are your thoughts on this, Tony?
I suppose my only thought, I mean, first of all, this is not a news story necessarily, but there's been a replication crisis for years, and there has to be some kind of way of identifying watermarking papers which have where there has been replication possible, where there's been significant replication possible, and that doesn't exist at the moment. Maybe should be an industry initiative
Mm-hmm.
to try and establish some kind of kite mark, watermark, whatever you want to call it, that says, look, okay, this research exists. It was published 5 years ago, and it's been replicated, and here is a kite mark to verify
Mm-hmm.
that it's been replicated. And I'm not sure who that body might be, but there must be a standards organization somewhere that will take it on.
Yeah, but the point of the article also is that even if replication is addressed in one way or the other, the quality of replication studies is in question. So there, I think
Yeah,
the
but that if sorry to interrupt you, Keiko. If there's a process in place, and that process, uh, the kite mark should define what that process is, and
okay.
therefore the quality of the study hopefully will be improved as a result. I mean, I think this is an interesting article. It doesn't necessarily tell me anything new. This has been going on for years, and in certain subject areas, it's even more difficult,
Mm-hmm.
to replicate in others. But there has to be some kind of industry initiative to try and verify the validity of these findings and the replication ability for these articles.
So interestingly, you mentioned other fields, and I think a few months ago, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of months ago, there was a discussion about how, at least in computer science research, one of the criteria for people to publish or submit in conferences is that they are able to replicate another person's submission, because it's computer science after all. And I thought it was a radical step, and I think we talked about it briefly on PubShorts. Is it
Yeah,
feasible for such a thing to happen in another?
yeah,
So in psychological studies, because of the nature of their studies, it is probably much more difficult. But I also understand. So my point with this is that regardless of whether we're talking about replication studies or let's say the primary studies, we still need, I guess, mechanisms or tools or structure systems that can still validate and sort of legitimize the robustness of methodology, which is in question in replication studies to begin with, and replicated studies. So that sort of a thing, coupled with, I mean, not coupled with, assisted by AI, is probably the way forward, because of the fact that there are so many submissions and replications. The act of replicating original research will add to the volume that we are already struggling with. Do you agree with that
yeah.
point? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I
All right.
do.
All right. Moving on to the next one. I think this got a chuckle out of you earlier. So this is from Science. Some guest editors pack special issues with their own articles. I'll ask you why you chuckle at this, Tony, later. About 13% of special issues were reviewed. That were reviewed. The guest editor authored more than a third of the papers, with which some consider a form of academic misconduct, which I think I would also agree with. Publishers like MDPI and Frontiers, which rely heavily on special issues, are noted in the study, with MDPI accounting for a large portion of the issues exceeding the problematic threshold. I do not know what the threshold is, but anyway, so there is a threshold established in the study. The study
There's a threshold. The threshold will vary from publisher to publisher.
Right, right, right. Okay. The study authors suggest that a guest editor should recruit two other authors for every paper. So they should not be single authors, is the main sort of in there. For every paper, they contribute to encourage broader discussion, while the study does not prove a lack of quality of these studies. If you are a guest editor, if you are submitting your own single author paper in, now, that is a question, but at the same time, it does not obviously check the quality of such papers. But the point is that the incentives in the current publishing model can potentially weaken peer review rigor, and this is the problem. I mean, we don't have a problem, as in, let's say, Tony, you're a guest editor. If you publish a high quality research consistently, and it's fine to have yours. At least that's what I would think if I were a publisher or a research integrity sleuth. But still, the quality of the research. I mean, this is exactly the sort of conclusion that I had after the previous story that we covered as well. We need consistent quality, and to assess or to verify the quality of research papers, we probably need automation. Not probably, we need automation to help humans do this, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we also need stricter rules. I mean, this wasn't a problem in an age where there weren't these financial incentives. These financial incentives exist now, and unfortunately, there'll be abuse as a result. I've worked for journals where if there was a special edition and a guest editor was brought in, there were very strict rules around whether the guest editor, him or herself, was permitted to submit a paper for that special edition. There've been cases where the guest editor was not permitted to do so because there was a fear of possible bias. But we're in a different world now, and there are financial incentives, and unfortunately, there are those pressures to achieve those incentives. It will mean that maybe certain things are happening that are not as we would like, or as it should be, or how they have been in the past. But right. I've certainly seen this in practice.
Right. Tony, I have a sort of another question related to this. So I think a few months ago, the STM Association as well as Scope, I think, came out with guidelines for guest editor editions, and which we covered as well. And this is also related to the fact that you probably have experiences as in knowing that such things exist. So my question to you is this: do we need specialized research integrity solutions for guest editor integrity and editorial integrity as such? I mean, we are talking about author integrity or researcher integrity most of the time. Should we also talk about editor integrity?
What we need, what needs to exist are tools which are flexible enough to be able to adapt to special situations, special conditions. So, let's take for example a normal journal issue, a normal journal run. Is an editor-in-chief permitted to submit a paper to the journal they're the editor-in-chief for? Well, yes. I don't think it's necessarily encouraged, but it's not discouraged. I don't believe it's had to be discouraged. Because ultimately the editor-in-chief is the final arbiter for whether a paper gets past peer review or not. So if he or she is editor-in-chief and is submitting a paper and it's been independently peer reviewed and they don't like the peer review decision, what's the possible ramification if they say, well, no, I disagree with the opinion of the reviewers, I'm going to let it run anyway. So as long as the tools that exist that can adapt. So, for example, they say if paper type is A or paper type is B or issue type is C, these conditions apply, and those conditions might differ from A and B, then why not?
And so this now, why you chuckle when we decided that we are going to cover this? Do you hear this a lot in your conversations with publishers and journal?
Not regarding special issues, but I do hear the need to be able to be flexible and be adaptable. Yeah, absolutely. No, I was chuckling more because I've been aware of this as a problem, particularly the bigger open access journals.
Right, and can you explain? I mean, do you think that the facilities, the features, or the features that we offer in Argo reports can help in weeding out some of these issues? In your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. If we set rules, we can set queries which will look at the paper, look at the information contained in the paper, the metadata in the paper, the structure of the paper, and if one of those is author verification, author identification, then we need to be able to verify not just at an article level, but at an issue level, even at a journal level.
Right.
Look at the publication history of the author, for example, which we already can do. And so if the author has been seen to be publishing a lot in one particular journal, then there also be metadata associated that says, well, okay, what is the relationship between this author and this publisher and this journal?
Right.
And is there a possible bias? We will highlight the bias or the potential bias. Are they citing one journal too much? Is one author citing another author too much? Example, those sorts of things are quite feasible.
Right, and
but it needs to be customizable and it needs to be flexible.
Right, and that's something that we are quite proud of in terms of customizability and flexibility.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a big thing. I mean, that's what kind of makes the difference between our tools and a lot of the other market tools out there. Is that when you're buying in Argo reports, you're not just buying an off-the-shelf tool. You're buying something that is truly customizable and truly reflects the workflows that you're operating.
Right. And so, from if a researcher or a representative of a publisher is watching this episode, how can they find more about the features that are available on Inago Reports?
We're in the process of updating the website, so I would say for the moment, contact me directly at tonio@inago.com, and I'll be able to point them to the right materials.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. And I'm moving on to the next story. It's a scholarly kitchen guest post. Open scholarship is poised to create more value than ever, but are we ready? Interesting question. So this is written by Ginny Herbert from AIP Publishing. Maybe you know the author already, Tony.
I know of her. I don't know her.
Yeah, right. Open scholarship is growing, but not as fast as we hoped. The business strategy framework is something that the author uses to explain this. Value creation and value capture is something that the author stretches. Ginny stretches in this. This means things need to be useful and also worth the effort to create and share. And that's a sort of value that she feels open access hasn't yet brought, at least at the level that one should. So researchers might not be sharing more because people aren't demanding these extra research output in terms of quality of the open access and the related sort of outputs. And studies show that many shared data sets get fewer citations. So we are also talking about open data, not just open, I guess, access articles. And maybe the problem is not the is demand, but how these outputs are being presented. And so we think of them as things to read or to be read, but they are often things to use in a system. That's the whole point of it. As in, if you just do not refer to them, you also use them in your future studies. So she also mentions the generative AI, large language models like ChatGPT, are changing how we interact with the information. We can now use the information because of the computational power of all these tools, and technically all the open access data sets can be used now. And that is how she thinks that we should use the opportunity, this big opportunity that generative AI and large language models offer us to advance open science in general. So I think it is a valid point. She also goes on about value capturing and how do you capture the value that you created from all of this. I think it's an excellent sort of a piece to understand where the open access movement has struggled and how we can improve it, especially with the help of large language models. What do you think?
I think it's a great article, very informative article. My only concern is that maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned on this. It's not an open science thing; it's a science issue. It's something that relates to all science, not just open science. The principles that she's describing here applies to any type of research content. And one of the business models that makes that content available is open science. Is the open model, but it still applies to a journal that sits behind a firewall, for example, or a conference or a book. If these principles can be represented, then everyone benefits in the value.
And as a response to that, what I'm trying to, I mean, what I think what I understand from the article is that because things are behind paywalls, because paywalls restrict the even the access to the data availability statement, the let's say the researchers who want to use the data, as in create value out of the data, may not have the access because it's simply not discoverable, right? And whereas the open access articles provide that, and even preprint servers provide that data. So I think the author's argument in this article would be that because open access would provide that data, it is the responsibility of the reader to use the data sets that might have been provided and then build
Yeah.
on top of it and create value. And that's probably the
But
difference.
this changing all the time. I mean, the kind of accessibility, the kind of access that a researcher has in 2026 is very different from what, say, they might have had 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
Business models exist. We talked about things like Hinari and Agora and these access research for life type models. They're making content available to more and more and more countries, more and more researchers in those countries, and they would otherwise never be able to afford to access that content. So yes, it's still a problem, but at the end of the day, I go back to I don't want to have a discussion on open access philosophy, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody's got to pay for this. Somebody's got to fund this, and somebody's got to make sure it's accessible. And we're just working slowly towards a point where that there's a funding model from that lunch that can be sustained.
All right. The last main article is from New York Times. It is a very unsurprising article, but it's titled Chinese Universities Surge in Global Rankings as US Schools Slip. So apparently, the Harvard University has fallen to number three in ranking that measures academic outputs, and Chinese universities are surging ahead in these rankings. And this trend might be accelerated by the cuts to funding, research funding under the Trump administration. And some experts see this as a significant shift in global higher education and research dominance. Now, while US universities are still producing research, Chinese institutions are progressing much faster. And a couple of universities mentioned here, maybe Tony, you've been to these universities. Zhejiang,
Zhejiang,
yeah,
Zhejiang.
is now ranked first in research output, surpassing Harvard, and several other Chinese universities are also in the top 10. So, we know that China is investing heavily on higher education, and this is also we've covered so many stories with regard to how the Chinese administration is supporting, I guess, research and incentivizing researchers from around the world to go and do research in China, whereas the sort of opposite thing is happening in the US. So my question to you is this: we obviously help with we offer services to Chinese researchers as well as the publishers who want to sort of grow in China. How does this, in your opinion, affect this sort of a trend in terms of China sort of forging ahead, affect the things and the clients that we provide services for?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, we as a business have a very strong presence in China. Our colleagues in Charlesworth Group do an awful lot of work with Chinese universities and working with Chinese publishers to sort of help promote and disseminate the content, not just in China but outside of China. When we know the fact that the Chinese government has been pushing Chinese universities to increase their profiles or increase their publication performance in global high impact journals. So none of these things surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
I think what surprises me is the fact that Harvard has slipped from number one to number three in such a short period of time. I mean, Trump's only been in power for a year, and I can't believe that the period of measure is that short. There must have been other fundamental things happening which have affected that before Trump, the regime came into power.
Right.
So no, but seriously though, I mean, if we do a lot of work with Chinese universities, we do a lot of work supporting their research, communication activities, whether it's journals or internationally or locally. And if anyone's interested in talking to us about how we can help them in China, then I'll be happy to put them in touch with the right people.
All right, great. Thank you, Tony. We are ready for quick hits. I hope you are ready too, Tony. We have, I think, 3 stories from Retraction Watch. Would you believe it? The first one, docked by Retractions. Iraqi researcher and publisher uses a different name. So, in a nutshell, a Iraqi researcher who has a significant number of retractions and flagged publication has begun using a different name. So, a pseudonym, and this pseudonym obviously it would probably circumvent all the checks that are already put in place. But this move follows increased scrutiny and decline in the publication output overall in his own sort of research output. And my question to you is, I haven't yet heard of pseudonyms being used in such a manner in the academic research publishing side. I mean, we know of fiction authors using authors using different names for different, I guess, genres. Ian M. Banks and Ian Banks is a good example, I think I can think of. But have you heard of this?
There's J.K. Rowling and Robert Galbraith, for example. They're the same person.
Yeah. So have you heard of something like this? And how can one tackle this? I mean, obviously, many of the authorship integrity issues or
it's all about research. It's all about having processes in place that will disambiguate the author. The thing is, authors changing names is nothing new. Authors having a different name is nothing new. But it has to be embedded. Everything has to be linked back to a source ID. So if old-fashioned, old school, if an author gets married, he or she, mostly more than she, often changes their name to take their partner's name. But that will still link back to the original ORCID ID. If an author introduces a mononym, for example, decides to refer to themselves in a different way or changes their name, again, that still has to link back to that MMID.
Hmm.
the author ID. So it's really the author's responsibility to ensure that happens. So there is no disambiguation, there is no confusion, no uncertainty or ambiguity in terms of who their author is.
Right.
Um, and I think it's right for Retraction Watch to highlight something like this, because I think it does potentially undermine the integrity of the whole research workflow.
Right, right. Now, we have another story from Retraction Watch about editorial integrity. So, finance professor in Ireland loses 12 papers in journals they edited. And obviously, this is related to questions from the quick, the publisher response was very quick, and it is about editorial integrity. Although the authors have sort of raised concerns that, I mean, this practice of editors publishing their own papers in journals is not uncommon, especially in their field. And the investigations are still ongoing. Any thoughts on this, Tony?
No, not particularly. It's correct for publisher girls to have these monitoring processes in place,
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving
and
on.
it protects the journal.
Right. All right. Moving on to the last quick hit we have. Sage Journal retracts more than 40 papers over concern with peer review and author contribution. So this is from clinical hemorrheology and microcirculation. Then the concerns are related to peer review processes, author contributions, alongside citation manipulation, potential third-party involvement. And the journal seems to have also lost its impact factor. I mean, this is just another story, but again, we talk about citation manipulation. We talked about citation manipulation in the Rolling Stone magazine a couple of episodes ago, and now we still continue to sort of hear. So from I'll shift to the our main video. This is a last quick hit. So how frequent is citation manipulation and hallucinated citations in the context of the academic publishing industry? You have conversations with many people. So what is your thought? As in, is it increasing as a concern from the point of view of these conversations?
Honestly, my concern is that publishers set rules, organizations like us set rules in terms of expectations of how authors should behave and work, how editors should behave and work. And most of the time they're adhered to, but occasionally they're not adhered to, and AI is being used when it shouldn't be used, or when it hasn't been declared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very keen for there to be a greater openness about how AI is being used
Right.
throughout the process. The reality is AI is going to be used in the process. We just need to understand how it's been used and how it's affected the paper. But it creates problems. There needs to be tools in place that will identify things like hallucinations, tortured phrases.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the author is saying one thing and doing something else, then we need to find that.
Right. And there's one thing that we should clarify. I mean, I think, Tony, you probably would have said this if there was more time, but the fact that AI use is not the problem. The use of, I mean, the responsible use of AI is perfectly permissible as per even the industry standards. And so when we cross that line and it becomes irresponsible and there is no human oversight, is when things start happening, bad things start happening. And that's what we have been promoting in terms of responsible use of AI through the responsible AI movement. And I guess the conversations are very fruitful, especially from the east of Asia. A lot of institutions are also in line with the responsible AI movement principles as well. Would you agree with that? And this is an important, I guess, movement or a mission, because in 2026 everybody will be using AI in one way or the other.
Yeah,
right?
as I said, it's a fact of life. I told you the story about the U.S. universities where you had one department that's banning the use, and then the building next door was another department where it was actually almost mandated that they're using AI, because they're going to be using AI in the workplace.
Right.
So there's no consistency, even within academic teaching and learning, and those sorts of things are definitely changing.
Right.
But in the meantime, you need to have service things like the responsible AI movement to describe what best practice is. Universities need tools like DocuMark, which is our tool that identifies how a piece of content has been created. Has it been generated by AI? Has it been cut and paste? Has it been copied and plagiarized from another source, to help verify the truth, if you like, of that particular paper. So, and again, if anyone out there wants to find out more about either the responsible AI movement or DocuMark or any of our AI checking verification tools, then please contact me at tonyo@naga.com, and I'll be happy to point them in the right direction.
Excellent, thank you. And this is we don't have to shift screens, but Tony, I'm particularly aware of the fact that I chose the song and the band because there's you have a personal relationship with the band, and
Not
something.
really.
Well,
But I
there
have a
is.
link. I have a link.
Yes. So something changed during COVID. Apparently, you discovered idols.
They were Idols were the soundtrack of of COVID for me. I mean, I didn't discover Idols until after their second album was released,
Uh huh.
and basically, I just became obsessed with their music. Absolutely loved their music.
Right.
And another great thing is, of course, they're from Bristol, which is where I live here in the UK. Or at least four of them, I think, are from Bristol.
Yeah.
And they were seen and still are seen very much as a Bristol band. They had a hometown gig last year, homecoming gig
Mm-hmm.
last year, which I didn't go to, which I'd like to, should have gone to. And in fact, the lead singer used to live across the road from my daughter when she lived in Bristol. So
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
they were great bands.
Right, and I'm sure that the band members of Idols are followers of PubShorts and have watched all the previous 138 episodes.
I would expect nothing less.
Yes, but not everybody is a band member of Idols. So where can they find all the 138 episodes?
Well, if you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to see the previous 138 episodes, I urge you to go to our the playlist over on YouTube. Just search for Inago, the Inago channel, and PubShorts, and you'll find the full run of 138 episodes, free of charge, accessible to anybody
Yeah,
with an interest in
open
what's
access.
been
We
going on.
believe.
Open access for anyone interested in research community. There might be the odd ad in there, but it's not our fault. That's YouTube.
And also full transparency. Every article that we talk about is provided with the URL. You can all refer to it. We encourage people to study the stuff that we briefly discuss and send us their thoughts. And we thank all the people who have already sent in their thoughts and recommendations and ideas for future episodes. We are
And
extremely grateful.
don't forget to press the like button and
Yeah.
share the content with your colleagues.
Yes, so that more bands like Idols can discover PubShots when they are scrolling through YouTube, right, Tony? And with that very serious thought that I just shared, I bring us to the end of episode 139, Divide and Conquer. And until the next one, this is Dr. KK signing off. Bye, Tony. We'll see you in the next one.
See you next one.